Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Everyone.
Hey, Shiva.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Shiva. Hey, everyone.
Hey, Shiva.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, based on the location that you are in.
Hi, guys.
Yes, indeed.
Cool.
So we do have good number of participants here, 30 already and still counting. Yeah,
Great.
yeah.
Everybody's
Jeff,
looking
everyone's
forward
excited
Jeff's
to,
session.
yes,
Yeah.
everyone's excited to hear you.
Is Jeff here?
No pressure. No
I'm
pressure,
here.
Jeff.
I'm here.
He is.
No
So,
pressure, Jeff.
It's okay.
yeah, no pressure. So before we get started, just one housekeeping item that we are recording this meeting. I hope everyone's okay with that. Let me know if there are issues.
Yeah.
We can stop recording. And this is an time boxed 40-minute session. So we are at 1 minute mark already. So now 39 minutes for the discussion. And all yours, Jeff.
Cool. Could you make me a co-host? Because there's a slide I want to share. Maybe a slide or two, just
Sure.
to visualize a couple things. So sure. I just want to, I'm glad we have a big group here because this is a topic I'm really passionate about, and I hope we can get into some good conversation here. And that's how you coach an enterprise to remove its own impediments. A lot of us, if we've worked as a Scrum Master, have experience getting a team to remove impediments. But as we know, a lot when you start working with multiple teams, impediments pop up that all of a sudden sometimes have been things that have been existed as impediments in an organization for years, but nobody's ever really confronted them. So I wanted to start out. You know, I'm going to share a slide, maybe two slides here. And I'm going to show you a typical, and this is I'm going to show you, this is from Scrum at Scale. And there's nothing particularly unique or special about removing impediments in the Scrum at Scale framework. It is one thing that Scrum at Scale focuses on really intensely. And so I'm going to, where did it go? Hold on for a second. I'm going to quick find where PowerPoint went. Hold on. Oops, hold on. This is a new computer for me, so I suddenly have to allow Zoom to share. Hold on. And now I need my glasses to do this. Sorry for the small delay. You know what? We're gonna not share it because this is a new laptop for me and it wants me to quit Zoom before I can share anything. So I'll just tell you a story. So, you know, in Scrum at Scale, you know, you start out with a team, and unless you have a good team process and a team that can remove its own impediments, nothing else will work. You can't scale a broken system. But once you get into that, within the Scrum at Scale framework, you have an entity known as the Scrum of Scrums. The Scrum of Scrums is not a meeting. It's a group of teams that have to deliver something together and often have to remove impediments between them and with the rest of the organization. And in big organizations, you maybe have a Scrum of Scrums or a Scrum of Scrums, and then maybe a few more levels up to something known as an executive action team. And in a lot of organizations that I've worked with, they really successfully remove impediments at the enterprise level if they have a very strict rhythm around removing impediments. An impediment may come up. The Scrum Master for that team would have 48 hours, for instance, to remove that impediment. If they don't, it automatically promotes to the Scrum of Scrums. No reason not to promote it. They have 48 hours. Then it automatically promotes to the Scrum of Scrums, and so on until after a certain amount of time, the executive action team gets that impediment and has to remove it. had saw this really successfully done when I was coaching at a unit of Cisco in Bangalore. They had 4 levels in their system, and they were very strict about it. And they also had all their impediments visible to the whole organization. You could walk around to any team or any scrum of scrums and see the impediments, all the way up to if it didn't get cleared with, say, in about 96 hours, you could walk up to the vice president's office, who's in charge of the entire 3,000 person unit, and see his impediment boards, the things he had to clear. They were really good at that. But there's a story I want to tell that just happened, that I was starting to work with just about a year ago. And it shows how a very, very simple impediment that seems like it was happening at the team level was all of a sudden actually challenging portions of the government. So I was coaching at at one of the large IT services firms in India. And I was down working with teams in their Chennai facility. And this was an organization, they were doing services for an insurance company in Indianapolis, Indiana, in the USA. And the product owners were in Indianapolis, and the teams were there in Chennai. And there were 3 teams working with them at that point. And the first thing I noticed when I got there is that they were all using, I think they were using Microsoft Teams. I'm sorry, let me correct myself. They were using WebEx to have their daily scrums. And a team would get on with a product owner and nobody could hear each other because they had this wonderful open space the teams were in, but there was so much noise in the background, right, that nobody could hear a thing. I would be sitting in the other room watching this happen on WebEx and nobody could hear a thing. And as a result, people were tuning out, okay? There's no reason. I'm only gonna speak when I'm spoken to, because otherwise it's so chaotic that no good information was passing forth between the USA and India. And a solution, because the solution wasn't WebEx, it was just the environment. And it was a simple solution. There was, instead of people talking into their computer microphones, everybody needed headsets. It was just very, very simple solution. So altogether, there was a Scrum's master working with the teams there. He was Scrum Master for a couple teams, and he was working with another Scrum Master for those 2 teams, and he was in charge of getting the headsets. And so all in all, because he had to do it for another team, he just had to order about 50 headsets for his teams and a few other people. And so he put in the order, and this is, again, I said, a big IT services firm. And the first thing he says, well, there might be an issue with procurement. And the instant he said the word procurement, I knew there was going to be trouble. Okay, it's just how bureaucracies work. And sure enough, the procurement division of this big IT services company says, oh, 50 headsets, we're going to have to go out for bids and do all this stuff, and it's going to take 6 weeks. Now, this is where you start as a coach. How you coach impediment clearing is you immediately say, Scrum Master, your team is blocked from communicating with your customer who's paying millions of dollars to your company every year, right? It's unacceptable for that team not to be able to communicate clearly for 1 day. And now your procurement, just because your procurement division now says, oh, it's going to take 6 weeks. Scrum Master, that's unacceptable. How are you going to handle that? All right. So then he obviously he can't overrule the entire procurement division of the multinational IT services firm. So he promoted that to his managers. And his managers were actually people that were in the United States at that point, and they were kind of they would be kind of at the middle management level. And they gave that issue to them, and they investigated, and they did what a lot of middle managers do. It's just procurement. We just got to live with it. It's just procurement. There's nothing we can do to change it. We're just going to have to wait. Now, I had coached the Scrum Master not to take that for an answer, right? You are holding the space for your team, removing that impediment and getting in communication with your customer who's paying you millions of dollars. So you just remind them that the eyes on the prize are making the customer happy. So I said, you know what? Don't take this for an answer either. If they're not going to help you clear that impediment, the next step up is for the executive action team. All right. Now, the executive action team, the way they organized it remember I said there was an IT services firm working for a big insurance company. So you had executives from the VP level in the United States, and those people reported to the CIO. And then you had executives from the IT services company, especially the vice president, who was in charge of this entire multi-million-dollar account. And we brought it to the executive team, and then the middle managers just said, you know, that's the same thing. You know, that's procurement. There's nothing we can do. We're just going to have to wait it out. And at that point, the vice president of the IT services firm in charge of the multi-million-dollar account, knowing you're talking about 50 headsets that maybe cost $100 or $200 in India, right? He said, you know, I've been hearing about this impediment for 2 weeks. And he's saying this to his middle managers that report to him. He says, I've been hearing about this impediment for 2 weeks, and I really don't want to be hearing about it anymore. Because he knew what was on the line. You're talking about a $200 purchase on a multi-million-dollar account. It's ridiculous, right? To sit there and let procurement dictate to us what the timing is going to be. And so he said this to his middle managers, which is to translate saying, just remove the impediment. Don't give me excuses. And 2 days later, the headsets started flowing in. All right. So this is the thing with us, when you're coaching a Scrum Master, the eyes are on removing the impediment. An impediment is anything that keeps a team from performing to its greatest capacity. And anything that gets in the way of that, you coach a Scrum Master, you have to hold the space. And it's the most powerful thing a Scrum Master can do. And in this case, almost the most uncomfortable thing a Scrum Master could do. Because this guy had to go over his bosses on behalf of his team and raise this impediment to the executive action team. All right. And that turned 6 weeks into about, by the time we got through with that, about 4 days before the head starts flowing in. Now, there was one more impediment that raised up to this. And this is one I would love to challenge those of you in India to figure out a solution for. Right? I haven't found anybody willing to take this jump yet. As you know, a lot of you work at facilities that may be in special economic zones, right? These office parks that I see a lot of heads nodding, right? So the special economic zones, which are designed to make it easier to do business, right? But often I've experienced all over India, they have these crazy bureaucratic rules. And in the special economic zone in Chennai, there was a guy who had to give a stamp to the purchase of every physical thing that moved in there. Don't ask me why, that was it. And that caused another 2-day delay. So the headsets were there. They were right there across the street, but they couldn't bring them in until they got this 2-day stay. They had the bureaucrat wait 2 days to give the stamp so you could actually purchase a thing. Right now, there was some argument about, well, we got to make sure he's not trying to avoid taxation or make sure they're not competing with local vendors or something like that. So they had a very good bureaucratic rationale for doing that. But the point is, the team was still blocked. All right. And as a Scrum Master, I'm like, why are you letting the special economic zone, which is supposed to be helping you do business, keep your team from communicating with a customer? Right. So this is kind of stuff I actually, excuse me, encountered in almost any place in India. What has, it seems like every special economic zone has its own crazy rules, right? I was right up until the time I got locked down in Calcutta, I was coaching at another IT services firm there in Calcutta in a special economic zone. And they had to hide the fact that I was there, right? And they couldn't allow me to sit at a desk. We can't give you your own desk. You have to borrow one, because the special economic zone had to document the desk assignment of every one of the thousands of people that worked in that special economic zone, because it was involved that people in seats are getting tax credits, right? So we got to document everyone to make sure you're not ripping us off for taxes. But that was an impediment, that whenever, often they would onboard a new people, they'd be done with onboarding, but the bureaucrats at the special economic zone still haven't approved the desk assignment. And so they couldn't start. And that was a huge impediment. So that's actually a challenge I have to you all, because it's because the interest of so many of these special economic zones is to make business do easier. But as an Agile team wanting to work away and get working and deliver stuff, that's often an impediment. All right, I've been talking for a while now. Did anybody here, because there are a lot of us here, we might have some really good stories. I don't want this just to be talking and telling impediment stories, which I have a lot
Jeff,
of. Yeah.
Yes. So Jeff, to your headset story, so I have a similar experience.
Yeah.
So, but we solved it a bit differently. Okay, so procurement in special economic zones is a pain. It's a real pain. First of all, your procurement office is a pain.
Yep.
Then the special economic zone, the legal factors are a pain. What we did, and it was a pilot project that we were trying to work in a distributed agile mode, and communication was the key. So what we did was that we gave Amazon gift cards from the account to the folks to buy their own headsets, and no one can stop you from bringing their own headsets in. So exactly. that was incentivization as well as getting your work done.
That's awesome.
We later procured some more headsets as new onboardings would come and all. But for the existing team, we went to the fact that we went to Amazon gets gift cards, and so that was a way we solved it in our team.
Wonderful.
So,
yeah, that's a great creative way of doing it. I mean, I gave you one method, which is kind of using the framework, right, and things like that. But the point is removing the impediments, right? So you actually did the important thing is you got the impediment removed, right? And yes, that's cheating a little bit. You're probably cheating somebody out of some taxes or something like taxes or commission or something like that. But the important thing is you got your team cleared. As a consultant, as a traveling consultant, I've had a thing in the United States once. I was, they couldn't get webcams, and when we really need webcams, and the director of the unit says, "Wow, if I get this through procurement, it's going to take a month." And I said, "Well, why don't I just buy the things off Amazon, and then I'll just add it to my expense account just so you approve the expenses?" And he's like, "Sure." And they had their webcams. So that was kind of me inserting myself as a coach, which isn't the healthiest thing to do, but it was a quick solution to the problem. And then they could work on the longer term problem.
Yeah, actually I was acting as a coach to that entire portfolio. So
that's right.
And the Scrum Masters were like, please. So I know I had to enable them, but it was an important deal, and we had to prove a point. So we came up with an idea.
You're teaching them, it's fun. I call those dirty tricks. They're not really dirty tricks. There's, like I said, maybe, but dirty tricks are okay like this, right? The point is keeping the system so it can deliver. But then your Scrum Masters learn something. So hopefully they learned how to play some of those dirty tricks in the future as well. And that's okay, right? I don't think anything we've done is going to get anybody thrown in jail or anything like that. But this is the thing is when you're approaching this as a coach, You know, don't insert yourself and try to design something, but you really hold your, you know, this is where actually you really have to hold your client to the fire, right? Scrum in particular, if you're coaching an organization using Scrum, makes horrible systemic impediments appear very quickly, right? Though that procurement thing had been in that organization for years, and it was ridiculous. 6 weeks to buy 50 headsets. It's, you know, when any one of them could walk up the street and buy 50 headsets just like that. It was crazy on a multi-million-dollar account. You know, dickering in 6 weeks over a $200 expense. Somebody had a question.
Yeah, so Jeff, another dirty trick which I can talk about is influence the internal management through my end customers. So one of the good things which happen in a Scrum world is that the Scrum team gets a good bonding with their end customers who are the clients, right? So one of the dirty tricks we do is have the executive of the end client just write down a message or send a message to the executive here of my organization, and it's not an escalation, it's just a message and an SMS which could clear all the walls of bureaucracy. So that's one of the dirty tricks which I can talk about.
You have a story to tell related? You want to tell the story related to it?
Yeah, I precisely said that. So what I did is I through my Scrum master, I had him overnight call his client manager and said, this is an impediment, which is a valid impediment, which is going through a bureaucratic process of getting a laptop to my new onboardees. So I requested him to just a small message to his counterpart in my organization. So I did send a message saying that I guess my team is held up with some laptop procurement in an AZ zone. So a message was all which was needed. So that was another dirty trick which helped me in one of the scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. That's actually, you know, it's funny. You reminded me, you know, having your customer come in kind of with their hands folded saying, I'm waiting for my value. It's a pretty powerful statement, right? And you can actually teach a Scrum Master to do that, actually, in a product owner to do that, to leverage your customer to help be unreasonable and remove those impediments. And especially in this situation, this is big money. Absolutely. You know, traveling back and forth. But it shows that kind of an amazing ability humans have to manufacture bureaucracy. You know, while you were telling the story, this is a non-Scrum related story, but it shows how when somebody thinks of a customer, right, all of a sudden things get cleared really fast. So I was in Pune, all right, and I was coaching at this company in Pune, and I was in their company cafeteria, and I wanted to buy a cup of chai. Okay, your basic 10 rupee cup of chai, right? So I walked up to the guy in the cafeteria, handed him my 10 rupee note, and he says, well, what's your division? I'm like, I don't know, I'm working as a consultant here. I don't have a division. And nobody asking me, and I'm turning to my friends, right, who I'm working with there, who work for the company, and none of them know what a division is either. This guy had in his head, I had to know his division, but nobody knew what a division was. And all of a sudden he's turning to his colleagues saying, I have to know his division. And they're like, and they're all talking in Marathi, so I have no idea what they're saying. Right? Until somebody waves at the manager who says, will you just give the guy his chai? Right? So, you know, because it's just like he's holding up the whole line over 10 rupees and not know, and nobody ever figured out what the division was he was asking for. So, but it's just amazing how humans have an ability to manufacture the stuff. They think the world is going to come end if I don't know the division, so we can give a 10 cent cup of chai or 10 rupee cup of chai. Yeah. So thank you. That's another great way. other methods people have for removing enterprise impediments? I heard a voice.
Yeah. So Jeff, I have a question, or I would say scenario here. I mean, for Scrum Master or Product Owner, all impediments, like if their team is not able to perform effectively, that's an impediment. That's the topmost priority for them. But at the enterprise level, that may not be the topmost priority. Like with all the things that the seniors or leaders at the enterprise level have to do, they might say it's okay for a particular team, if you're not as effective for certain weeks, we have other things to do. So I mean, here at least the case that you shared, at some level they agreed this is important and they said let's expedite. What if till the top level they say no? I mean, it's okay to wait for a few weeks.
Well, remember, you have to give a business case, right? Now there you had teams on opposite sides of the globe who could not go together. So the economic case there is clear, right? They're paying who knows how many thousands of dollars a day for these teams in India. And it's getting held up over a $200 purchase decision. So the economic case is clear there, right? Similar things. Don't, the thing is if you're always put the business impact in front of their face, right? Talking numbers. I tell a story if I'm teaching a class about a Scrum Master. She was a Scrum Master for a team that was encountering very frequent infrastructure failures, so much that the teams couldn't work, right? And the leadership just said, well, it's just, we've had this for a long time, we're just gonna live with it, all right? So she went and figured out how much her team cost per minute, which is not a hard thing to do. Just go to your finance people, say, well, I got these team members here, salary, fringe benefits, other stuff like that. What's this team cost per minute? And she drew a chart of a thermometer outside the team's face, right? And every time the infrastructure went down and the team couldn't work, that chart started filling up. The thermometer started going up, measuring the amount of money that the enterprise was wasting by a team that was sitting there doing nothing. And it was a chart that all the executives had to walk by, right? When she actually, and this is good Scrum, this is showing an empirical impact of an impediment. This is not just, oh no, this is just really bad. This is showing a real economic impact. So as soon as the executives actually saw the amount of money that was getting wasted by people doing no money, the impediment got cleared, right? So that's a good point. If they don't, sometimes you have to actually convince executives, and the best way to show it is show how much money they're flushing down the tube by not clearing this impediment.
I'm sorry, yeah, Jeff. Yeah, it's interesting. But how did you quantify in dollars or money, units of money?
Just go to your finance people, especially if it's easy. If your team is doing services for an external client, then you know exactly what they're getting charged for. Right? Your finance people should be able to give you a really good number of what the team. I mean, that's not like they're not telling you people's individual salaries, but they're computing the whole cost function for that team, which is probably for, there might be an hourly rate or a per sprint rate or something like that they're charging the company. Then it should be really easy to quantify. If it's an internal company, a little more difficult, but this is what finance people do to figure out whether the project is actually paying off.
Right. Even if you don't have the actual number, you could always just throw in a number like $12, $13, which we know is in the ballpark, and just start with that assumption and then quantify it on that basis.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, somebody will tell you if you're wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I have another perspective, where I heard about Amazon vouchers and other things, and really speaking in brands where you have very structured products for your employees, you cannot use these things because everything is done through a system. Everything paid as a voucher, there is a taxation. So it's not, I'm coming from a company where it's not possible. You cannot do all these things. So what has worked in other cases, I'm managing different feature teams across a platform. And what we have done is ensuring these support teams are part of our extended Scrum team. So we make sure, and I always say very proudly that your connection matters. And I'm very proud of my connection quotient. And I say it across that it takes time to build that. And you can very easily build with the teams who will be influential and who can make your journey easy. People generally say they get impacted, and when I ask them why you have not connected with the supply chain head or finance head, or I'm hearing so many things over here. Trust me, it requires investment of time. It requires nurturing that relationship. It's required that trust which needs to be built. And in the end, today I can say I'm in such a good position that if I have any such issue, my connections are sitting and it just works in a magical way. So I feel that it's very important. Generally, when we talk about Scrum, it's only delivery. We have to go beyond. You have to go beyond your dedicated Scrum teams. Start focusing on that extended teams which are going to create an impact, and it's working really well, where consciously you're also satisfied, you're not compromising on any system. That's my take on this point.
Yeah, that's excellent. You know, as a Scrum Master, especially if you're working in a big enterprise, becoming a master networker is so important. You know, developing a trust relationship with the procurement people, with the HR people, and things like that. So hopefully, you know, the great Scrum Master never has to have something put in front of the executive action team. You know, they make those impediments clear faster, and it's only the really difficult things. You know, the example I shared with you is with the teams that were still fairly new to Scrum in big, you know, the whole project was still very new to Scrum. So they really didn't know how to do that. The Scrum Masters weren't great enough networkers. And in a big IT services firm, they felt there was a disincentive to do that. You know, they're in a culture where you just kind of want to hide from the problems. And
no, I absolutely understand that, but I just thought with maturity and by spending time, I would like to share this perspective also. Increase your connection quotient, it really works. There is nothing like having a good network within the company.
Yeah.
Another aspect that I want to share, in addition to being networked, we also need to put a structure to this interaction with functions, which is you're not having influence directly on. What I did was to have once in 2 weeks stand-up meeting with the BU head, each BUs once in a week. And each of these stand-up would not last for too long. It is 15 minutes stand-up meeting or 15-20 minutes stand-up meeting once in 2 weeks. And that is a different focus or different functions. So you have one focus on HR, another one focusing on IS, another one focusing on some other functions, which sales and marketing and all the stuff. So what happens is this kinds of brings in some focus, and they have also had their own individual backlog, which is prioritized, depending on what, the priorities of different delivery priorities are. So you had a backlog for each of these functions. They would take their backlog, go back to their people and commit based on what they can do. And then we would say that this is a risk because we need to deliver this specific, product. And then I have said that will be put it up in the backlog. And we didn't automate. At least they had a basic system using this backlog prioritization, and they would work for some time. Of course, there are challenges in terms of but it brought in predictability over a period of 6 to 8 months. That what is the lead time that we could do when you're dealing with these functions, whether it is onboarding somebody new or whether it is getting some specific items. The custom clearance case. Now we know what is the backlog of time that it takes, and then we put our delivery based on that when you plan. And then it has to be, you need to really commit based on that lead time. And then we start, and they also, but they started putting some their own KPI. So this is a lead time for these kind of items that you want to get something. This is the lead time for exporting something, some equipment that you probably need to do testing on certain things. So there was some systems put in place. We are not perfect, but we need to put a structure to it. If you're trying to address a lot, it's not.
Yeah, and I just want to do a little time check. We're on a free version of Zoom, so we have about a little over 5 minutes left before the thing goes poof. Yeah, that's the thing. I can say, because my experience in scaling is with Scrum at Scale. A good Scrum organization practicing Scrum at Scale, all of a sudden, you know, we don't want these procurement issues to keep coming up to the executive action team. There's actually a team. And the executives might say, all right, we have a business result we want. Instead of a 6-week procurement cycle, we want a 3-day procurement cycle. I just pulled that number out of thin air, right? You know, they're setting a business goal, but then they're getting a team that involves the procurement people and anybody else who needs to be in it. And that's their backlog item, is to improve the system. So we have a 3-day procurement cycle. Yeah, that's actually a really good example. Thank you for that. There were a few questions in the back channel. Does somebody else have anything they want to share? But I was just looking at a few questions in the chat window. Okay, let me kind of go through some of these questions here. How do we deal with empowerment challenges for a Scrum Master and Agile Coach? Is it a right suggestion to move out of this type of situation where their autonomy is with a middle layer of management? This is what Scrum does, right? It challenges these things that have been there for a long time. This is where the Scrum value of courage, it's really important, right? If you're a Scrum Master for a team or a group of teams, remove the impediment. Right? Don't be afraid of actually getting your middle manager standard up. It's not personal. It never is, right? But the important thing is to remove the impediment, to show the business impact, that the money that's getting wasted by not clearing this stuff. So this is the thing. This is where Scrum Masters are real change agents. You're not there to clear the impediment. You're there to make it painfully visible. Right, and let the people actually involved figure out how to remove the impediment. The story I told at the beginning, that Scrum Master didn't suggest to remove the impediment. All he's saying is my team is blocked because we can't communicate, and I'm being told 6 weeks. So yeah, there's that. All right, enterprise related to HR, purchasing, sales, and marketing. What's your experience with handling? What systems? So I wish, and I'm sorry I couldn't show the pictures because I couldn't show them because this is I have a new laptop here and it wasn't quite ready for it. But you know what, I showed the thing at Cisco, they actually had physical task boards at the team, the Scrum of Scrums level, the division director level, and then the executive. So they had 4 levels and there were physical impediment boards, right? That showed where things are stuck and where things are getting cleared. And anybody in that 3,000 person organization could work and do it. Now they were all co-located. It's easy to replicate these things online, not as effective, I think, because it's just not the tactile experience. You know, but I had another unit at Cisco I work with actually set up impediment kiosks that people could walk up and enter an impediment, right? So they actually had systems in place that made it easy, right? All right. I thought I saw one other question in here. Did I? Shweta, how do we set Scrum Masters free from status reports, dashboarding, and other various things? Because those are indeed impediments sometimes if you're spending all your time reporting. I have a rule of thumb, right, that I do with Scrum Masters, is that I want to be able to walk into the team space and look at the artifacts on the wall and look at the team and tell everything that's going on with that team within 2 minutes without ever asking anybody any question, right? I don't want a status reports. And so this is the thing, in my experience, if you make all those artifacts visible in your team space, whether it's virtually, and invite your execs and your managers in to look at them, all of a sudden they find they can get better information faster by just looking at the artifacts than waiting for a status report, right?
Jeff, it's really challenging in my organization. It's really challenging to, pull all the executives and CIOs and other people.
I'm not talking about pulling them into a meeting. I'm talking about inviting them to come take a look, right? And if it's tough, look at what you're reporting. Is that really valuable to them? I'll tell you, and this is one because we're at less than a minute here. I wish I could show you this example from General Motors that had an impediment board with 23 teams on it. And the CIO